As analytics managers at Pfizer, let's look into the vaccine distribution of all vaccine manufacturers across the world. But first, let's look into some of the key points in this dataset.
The data is sourced from official reporting by countries to the WTO and Our World in Data as of September 2021. It includes the total number of vaccine doses administered, the number of people vaccinated with at least one dose, and people fully vaccinated for most countries. The most commonly used vaccines globally are Pfizer, BioNTech, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Sinopharm, Sputnik, and Covaxin have also been widely used in certain regions. Most countries have utilized multiple vaccine types in their rollouts, with the number of approved vaccines ranging from 1 to 9 per country. Vaccination started in late 2020 and expanded globally through 2021, with wealthier countries generally having higher vaccination rates so far compared to low-income countries.
When it comes to the dynamics of vaccination distribution for all vaccine manufacturers, the ChloroPath map visually represents COVID-19 vaccination rates worldwide, indicating the percentage of each country's population that has received at least one dose of the vaccine. The presented values are expressed as percentages out of 100, providing a clear metric for understanding the vaccination coverage. For example, a value of 66.8 for the US signifies that 66.8% of its population has received at least one vaccine dose. These rates are calculated based on the total country population rather than just eligible population. Regional disparities in vaccination rates are evident, particularly in lower rates observed in developing countries. For instance, in countries like Egypt, the vaccination rate stands at 8% of the population receiving at least one dose, signifying a potential area for focused intervention and market expansion.
We can also see from the interactive capabilities of the dashboard that once we're looking at the month of February, we can filter exactly on February and see that the filter here on dates for the COVID vaccine distribution also change. As well as we go for deaths, it's gonna alter this. When we look for something in December, for example, the graph over here is gonna change to the 2020 data. And then finally, once we wanna have a broader lookout of our dashboard, we can see everything at once.
It's interesting to look at how effective the vaccines are, and when it comes to preventing deaths and new confirmed cases. To do that, we're gonna look at the dashboard. In this dashboard that we made, we can see that for both graphs, we can see a big discrepancy in the low number of deaths compared to the number of doses that were administered for COVID-19, as well as for the low new confirmed cases compared to COVID-19 doses that were administered. Nevertheless, deaths are drastically lower than the new confirmed cases.
Another interesting fact when looking at how effective the vaccines are when it comes to preventing deaths and new confirmed cases is when we look at Turkey. Turkey is a great example of one of the top 10 countries with most confirmed cases, but when we look at the amount of deaths, is not the highest one and is one of the top recovering cases. So we can see how effective vaccines are and how well people are recovering and keeping on living during the pandemic.
Now, we're going to investigate the data to see how the distribution of COVID vaccines have changed over time. Let's look at 2020. Back then, the world was just beginning to grapple with the COVID-19. Vaccine distribution was limited, especially in places like Africa and a big chunk of Latin America. This includes places like Colombia, Peru, even places like Australia, Indonesia, India. All of them were facing challenges in getting enough vaccine doses. Now, let's move forward to 2021. It's like day and night. More than half of Africa has now received COVID vaccine doses. This is a huge improvement. Countries like Colombia and Peru are also much better. Almost every country in the world has received at least one dose of COVID vaccines. except for a few places. They are mostly in Africa. But wait, there's more. It's not just about more countries getting vaccines. The number of doses have skyrocketed. Many countries have received over 3 times the number of doses compared to last year. This tells us not only that vaccines being distributed are getting better, but it also could be a change in production. As we keep fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, it's clear that things are looking up when it comes on vaccine distributions. By digging into the data, we're getting a better panorama of how vaccines are making their way around the world. This is a crucial step towards a safer and healthier future for all of us.
Finally, developing countries are expected to have higher demand in the near future. Despite administering over 818 million doses already, India has a massive population of over 1.3 billion people. Less than 45% of the population has received 1 dose so far. As supply ramps up, demand is likely to continue growing rapidly. Brazil, as one of the worst hit countries, has vaccinated around 65% with 1 dose. Further demand is likely as it seeks to increase coverage. With around 47% of its people receiving a single dose, Mexico has room to grow, especially as more supply becomes available. Indonesia, with a population of over 270 million, has only given 1 dose to around 30% of its people so far. Further demand growth is expected. Pakistan, with over 220 million people and just 13% receiving a single dose, will see significant ongoing vaccine demand. A similar situation as its neighbor India, Bangladesh, with a large population and low single dose coverage so far, 14%, so more demand is expected. Finally, Nigeria. With a larger population than Bangladesh, Nigeria has only 2% of its population with at least 1 dose of the vaccine. So, in summary, developing countries with large populations and low current vaccinations rates are likely to have the highest demand growth for COVID vaccines in the coming period as more supplies hopefully becomes available.